We're now going to hear public testimony on resolution number 11. All the registered witnesses will be participating virtually via Zoom. We'll call the names one by one. Please remember to keep your testimony to 2 minutes. And you may begin your testimony when the sergeant starts the clock, which they will tell you. We're going to start with Alphecca Muttardy.
You may begin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alphecca Muttardy. I'm a macroeconomist with the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank. I support resolution number 11, asking members of Congress to pass their bill, H.R. 4052, because this legislation will bring up to $322 billion over 10 years in new financing to the state of New York and to New York City to finance affordable housing, transit, lead-free water, the power grid, and many more other projects. Congress members, U.S. Congress members already signed on to this bill include Adriano Espaillat, Daniel Goldman, Gerald Nadler, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Patrick Ryan, Thomas Suozzi, Paul Tonko, Richie Torres, and Nadia Velasquez. We want to bring on more members of Congress as this legislation is reintroduced into the next Congress, and your resolution will give much more support for that. So I urge the Finance Committee to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have Dr. Nomi Prins.
Good morning, thank you. I'll make this brief. I'm Dr. Nomi Prins, a macroeconomist with the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition, a native New Yorker and former managing director of Goldman Sachs. I've also testified before the Senate. I urge you today to not just support resolution number 11, calling upon the U.S. Congress to pass and the President to sign H.R. 4052, the National Infrastructure Bank Act of 2023, but to affirm former FDR-era leadership and financing strategies for the nation by advocating for this off-budget mechanism that invokes no new debt or taxes and are used by every other G20 nation except the United States. New York has a backlog of infrastructure needs in search of financing that will not come from Wall Street banks or the muni bond market. 10% of New York bridges, to name just one infrastructure necessity, are deemed structurally deficient. The only way to substantively grow the economy and the job market in New York and for the country versus the size of our debt is to create a national infrastructure bank with the financial might to get it done. Please pass resolution number 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Now we have testimony from Stan Forczek.
May begin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and members of the committee. My name is Stan Forczek. I am on the advisory board for the Coalition for National Infrastructure Bank. I'm also a retired executive from Amtrak, spent over 30 years there. I've worked with Con Edison, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and a lot of other organizations within the city of New York, and also the Albany Transit Authority. I also retired from an energy consulting firm based out of Philadelphia. And I want to take a different approach. I like what Dr. Prins has said, and we all believe in that. Every member of the coalition believes in that. But I want you to take and look within as to what's going on within the country, and especially in New York. I mean, there's a lot of projects going on. You have the Gateway Project, you have the East Side Connection, you have a lot of transportation, very major projects going on. But the smaller projects need help. Think of it this way. Infrastructure took off in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, and it was built for a lifespan of 50 to 75 years. That is approaching now 100 years old. You had an event within the city several weeks ago where a subway line was stopped, a train was stopped. We had to get passengers out through a tunnel. It was all caused by a substation which was 100 years old. You have to think about where we are in relationship to when everything was built. Everything was built many years ago. There's a lot of substations that are out there that are 100 years old. I can tell you when I took over Amtrak as Director of Finance for Northeast Corridor Operations, all of our substations were over 100 years old, and they all had to be replaced. The National Infrastructure Bank,
Your time
which
has
used to
expired.
be-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Now we have Gene Binder.
You may begin.
Gene, you there?
Sorry, I had a little trouble unmuting myself. My name is Gene Binder, and I am a resident of the Bronx. I was a New York City public school teacher for 38 years, and for most of those years, I was the UFT chapter leader at my school. Don't want this to be too long, but just want to give a few examples of infrastructure needs in the Bronx. Just this week, we had a tremendous water main break. It was a 120-year-old pipe that went and caused a lot of destruction in that neighborhood. There are several areas of the Bronx that I know about where sewage will back up into people's houses if there is a rainstorm. And these are examples of deferred maintenance. And if the infrastructure bank was a reality, these kind of needs could be addressed. The Bronx has the highest hospitalization rate for asthma in New York City, and air pollution is one of the main causes. The infrastructure bank would be a source of funds to remedy the pollution in the Bronx if it was a reality. And homelessness is a tremendous problem for the Bronx as well as many other parts of the city. The South Bronx has one of the highest rates in the city. And 1 in 3 Bronx residents there are below the poverty level. Building the amount of housing that we need will require more funds than any level of the government right now is willing or able to provide. But the National Infrastructure Bank would be a source of those funds. If it was a reality, I urge the committee to support the resolution to make the National Infrastructure Bank a reality. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Gene. Now we are joined for testimony by Assemblymember Joanne Simon.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you for your grace in my delay here. You can blame the MTA. Why not? So anyway, good morning. It's a pleasure to testify before you. I've been working on talking about the National Infrastructure Bank for a number of years. I think other members of the group have testified previously, so I don't want to repeat that, but I don't know what they said. So let me just talk about housing. I can talk particularly about my district, but some of these issues are certainly present throughout the city and the state. First of all, the number of housing, the need for new housing, and the cost of new housing. So right now in my district, we have had massive amounts of housing that is not even remotely affordable because it costs too much to build on the private dollar. And so downtown Brooklyn, Dumbo, Vinegar Hill, massive amounts of housing. Gowanus, we're doing a little better. We have a lot of cleanup there. Now we're looking at the Brooklyn Marine Terminal and whether or not that can support housing. That creates many sustainability issues. But one of the big issues that also affects housing that we haven't really dealt with as a city is water and sewer, right? We have a big issue with aging sewers and aging water pipes. And that all affects whether we can build, when people are living there, whether they're going to have the services they need, and whether or not they're endangered by the fact that our infrastructure under the ground is not supporting our infrastructure above the ground. So the National Infrastructure Bank can create $5 trillion worth of funds to go towards these needs. The Infrastructure Act that was passed in Congress is only going to last another 2 years in terms of money, and it was only roughly 10% of what the country needed. New York State has gotten a lot of money from that, but it's a drop in the bucket. So obviously this is focused on housing. We're talking about transportation, talking about BQE, talking about everything. All of these things can be addressed directly through the National Infrastructure Bank, and that's one of the reasons why I support this resolution, and I thank you for your time and attention today.
Does anyone have any questions for the Assembly member? Assembly, do we have an idea of how much money we'd be able to get back just for New York?
Well, it would depend on what New York applies for, right? Because basically you're looking to borrow like you would borrow from a bank, but you would borrow at a very reduced rate, and the bank would work with you in terms of payment. One of the points I like to remind people of is the last time we did this was through the Depression and the war years, and not one borrower throughout the Depression defaulted. And as you know, during the Great Depression, cities and towns, counties were all very strapped. This is what got us the infrastructure we're using today. They built a lot of things in the 30s, and those are things we look to preserve, but also those are things that are wearing out. And so I think what's very important is that people have nothing to fear about this. It really will generate this income. It's not subject to political battles, right, in Congress. Or even in the state legislature. There's no political battles here. You want the money, you present your application, it gets funded, you do the work, you pay it off at a greatly reduced rate, but the value of what it is you just built is paying dividends already for you as a local entity. And these are only government, public infrastructure projects, so we're not talking about private projects here.
Thank you, Assemblymember. I appreciate you elevating this issue to me personally and being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're going to have Billy Martin call the roll so we can vote.
Good morning, William Martin, Committee Clerk. Roll call vote, Committee on Finance. All items are coupled. Chair Brennan.
I vote aye.
Ayala.
Aye.
Powers. Lewis.
Aye.
Brooks Powers.
I vote aye.
Brewer.
Aye.
Farias.
I vote aye.
Hanks.
I vote aye.
Hudson.
Aye.
Osei.
I vote aye.
Sanchez. Stevens.
Aye.
Thank you. Williams. 1.
I vote aye.
Salam.
I vote aye.
Just for the record, that was Councilmember Williams I voted, not Councilmember 1. Carr.
No on Resolution 11, and aye on the rest.
Councilmember Moya.
I vote aye.
Thank you. By a vote, with a vote of 15 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, no abstentions, all items have been adopted by the committee, with Resolution 11 being adopted by the committee by a vote of 14 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and no abstentions. All items are still adopted.
Okay, thank you, Billy. With that,